Hi, everybody. I am Steve Sozio, one of the clinical research faculty in scholarly concentrations. And we talked last time about how to prepare an abstract. Now we're taking it to the next level of how to make a high impact poster presentation. And so at the end of this talk, we'll understand the components of a poster, and we'll also describe common mistakes in making a poster and how to circumvent these. So the goal after this is that you can start to make your own poster to again make it high impact and make it worthy of your work. And so when we make a poster, the traditional formats that we use are PowerPoint. There are templates that are available online. I gave you one such website here. And companies also provide templates. Here's two companies that we have here in the US that actually provide those templates that you can use for the poster templates. When you make the poster, you have it read by your co-authors as well as your mentor. And then if you're presenting at a conference, you have two different options. You can either have that poster shipped to your home, or you can have it shipped to your hotel, or sometimes even shipped directly to the conference. If you decide to have it shipped to your home, most airlines allow that poster as a carry-on. I would check with your carrier to make sure that they allow that, but that's the traditional option that many of us choose. So here's one such example. This is a poster that I presented several years ago, and I'll step through different parts of this poster. But I wanted to give you the format of how these look when you make these in PowerPoint. So you can see this one has 4 columns. I'll go through the individual structure of this poster throughout this presentation. And you can see the highlighting of this poster as well as the boxes. And again, we'll step through this poster. So some common mistakes that people make with posters is that they first have a hard time finding the objectives and the main points. That's one mistake. But a more common mistake is trying to cover too much material. The slides in that PowerPoint is busy, the text is too small, they might have poor graphics, some bad color combinations as well. Another mistake that people might have is they might have figures that are not explained or too complicated. So you want to use the figures that explain the key findings. You may not be able to explain all the findings in your poster, but you want to at least demonstrate the key findings of your study. And then checking for spelling and grammatical errors as well. Again, this is your chance to shine with your work. So if you have spelling and grammatical errors, that might suggest that your work might be sloppy as well. So that's not a perception that you want other people to have of your poster. Some general tips about the poster. Keep it simple. Again, many mistakes come with trying to have too much in there. So less is more. When you're making these posters, there's going to be a large room with a number of posters in there, so you want to try and use high contrast colors. Avoid these background and textures because they may be difficult to follow and also difficult to have somebody grasp what that poster means. What I showed you with my previous poster, you want to typically divide this into about 3 to 5 columns. I like to use 4, but you can go all the way up to 5 columns. And you typically want to have a flow from left to right. Some people argue that the leftmost corner and the bottom right corner are the highest impact areas, and so that's the general flow you want to have of these posters. Use headings to separate your poster, and then use that white space around the poster to organize and use the boxes in there to cluster the text. So it really is all about the text and the figures as you make these posters. So keep the text elements to about 50 words or fewer. Again, you don't want to have long sentences here. You don't want to have paragraphs here. This is bullet points. Use phrases rather than these full sentences. Use an active voice rather than a passive voice. Avoid jargon unless it's appropriate for your specialty and appropriate for the conference. When you're making the text in those individual bullets, you want to left justify it. So avoid centering, avoid right justifying. Those are harder to follow. And never use all caps. That suggests that you're shouting at the audience. And that's not the perception you want either. If you read some of the literature about how to make a poster, different people suggest different fonts. So some of the fonts that are easier to see might be a serif font, such as Times for most texts. You can use a sans serif font for titles and headings. And most importantly, whatever font you choose, you want to make sure that font is large enough to see. And so some people suggest that it should be about 24-point font in the text, 36-point font for headings, and pay attention to the text size and figures. That must also be large enough. The title should be large enough for people to see from a distance, so that should be in a poster when it's printed in the large format should be about 5 centimeters tall. And a good way to check all this is to print it out on a piece of paper landscape, and make sure it's legible even at that. If you can't see it in the landscape format printed on a piece of paper, your audience won't be able to see it when they're coming and looking at your poster either. Okay, so that's some common tips that we have for posters. Now I'm going to go into the format of posters. So when we talk about the format, we talk about different items. And you can see that these items are the same items that typically show up in your abstract as well. Those items are the title, the abstract, the background and research question, the methods, the results, the conclusions, the limitations and implications, and the references and acknowledgments. People have different perceptions about what the abstract is and whether that should be in the poster. I tend to leave the abstract out of the poster, and the reason I do that is because that's valuable space that you want to use to present your results, and that's valuable space that make your poster busier. People traditionally have the abstract available in an abstract book or an abstract app, so I tend to leave that out. But some conferences require the abstract to go in that upper left-hand corner, so please check with your own individual conference. So the title comes with the authors and institutions. So you might be asking yourself, who should be listed as authors on the poster? Well, traditionally, if you've submitted an abstract for it, the same people that are on as authors for the abstract should also be listed as authors on the poster itself. But I encourage you to talk with your mentors about this issue. Talk with who's included, what's the order of inclusion. Make sure the correct spelling of their names and degrees are on there as well. And so coming back to my poster from several years ago, the top of this is the actual authors as well as the affiliations. And what you can see is I included the logo of the study there on the left, and I included the logo of the Parent Institution of Johns Hopkins Medicine on the right. So talk with your authors and primarily your mentor about what is the right logo as well to be on here. The next part is the background and the research question. Just like my abstract talk, this area is the reason you chose to do this work. It should be a brief description of the existing literature with a focus on why your project is timely and important. Try to avoid statements such as no one has examined this topic. You might have 4 to 5 key papers that lay the groundwork for this project. Those 4 to 5 key papers can be referenced at the bottom right-hand corner of the poster. Again, it should be a brief synopsis, and it should also include a succinct statement of your research question or hypothesis. So coming back to my poster, here in the top left-hand corner is my background and study question. Expanding upon this, you can see I have this bulleted with a short description of what I'm doing, and then the study question that flows from that as well. Again, the background, just like when you were doing your abstract, doesn't need to be a lengthy section. It should just be enough that the people walking by and people reading your poster know the area of expertise, know why you're doing this study, and know why it's leading to a study question. Next is the methods. The methods, just like your abstract, talk about the design, talk about the study population, talk about the measures, the variable interest, whatever groups there are, whatever drugs you might be using, and the analytic methods. I encourage people not to use too much text in this. So you might have either a flow chart or a diagram to be helpful here. And one of the formats that I use is a chart. The chart has all those elements. And again, when you're standing in front of this poster explaining it, you can actually point to those specific elements. So blowing that area up, again, this chart or this table talks about the design, the setting, the participants and enrollment, the exposure that I had on this, the outcomes, and the analyses. This might either take that first column or it might even go into the second column as well. But this is a nice way for you to present your methods and point to the most important parts. But if someone's looking at your poster, they may then come back to some of the more specific elements of your methods. Next is the results. The results section, you want to give specific data. You want to have it consistent with the objectives. And when possible, try to have comparative statistics as opposed to just descriptive statistics. And figures and tables may say more and take up less space than text. You want to use headings to orient the readers and convey the major points. You want to summarize the major points. And so the headings are those opportunities to summarize. For the headings, you want to use a large font. Those headings help the reader move through the poster. And the more important the point, the larger the type you should use. Make the strongest statements your findings and methods will allow. The results section typically uses up the most space. So coming back to my poster, You can see that out of this poster, the center two columns took up the entire results section, and I even on this poster used a little bit of the rightmost column. Expanding upon that, you can see I have a flow chart on the left-hand side about what my study was doing, who was enrolled in the study, and what my final study population was. Then I have some baseline characteristics of my study so that I can walk through this and that readers can compare to their own patient population. Then I have some figures presenting the main findings as well as some statistics on those figures. And then finally on the rightmost column, I have some of the analytic findings that I had, including some of the models that I presented here. So again, I can present and walk through as much or as little of this as I want to. A reader can stop me and say, well, what does this figure mean, if they have additional questions. But this really allows me to present my main findings and show what the main findings and the results of my study are. And then comes the conclusions, the implications, and limitations. So this is the section for you to show what does your study really mean. The summary and implications are there not just to restate your results, but to show, okay, what does this imply about patients that I'm caring for? What does this imply about the next study? Just like the abstract, avoid extending your conclusions, but don't be afraid to be direct in the potential implications. Usually you might have 1 to 2 main points of the conclusion, what your study added, what the next step is, and again, just like before, bullet points are okay on this. And then you want to describe some key limitations of your study as well. So here's where I put this on my poster. I have strengths, limitations, conclusions, and implications. The strengths and limitations are there. What are the strengths of the study? Why do we do this? What are the strengths of what I did? What are the limitations of my study? The conclusions are what did I find with my main results? And the implications are what is the implications for this for practice, as well as what are the implications for this for the next study. And then finally, the last section is the acknowledgments and references. This might include the funding source, any contributors who are not authors, say for instance your scholarly concentration advisor or the scholarly concentration program, or any funding from the dean, and any references. The references can be in a much smaller font. If you've referenced things in your introduction, they can be about half the size of the rest of the references. So that's your poster. Now to the fun part of it, now to presenting. So posters are a different way to present than either abstracts or oral presentations. I gave you the abstract talk. You'll hear about oral presentations as well. When you're presenting a poster, it's a large room either at your university or at a national conference. So there's a large number of posters. You're one poster in a sea of many posters. So that's why you want to have your poster stand out, not be too busy, but be explicit about what you're finding. So it should show that detail, but it should show it in a simplified way so that people can follow your poster, stop at your poster, be excited about your poster. And I encourage each of you to have about a 3-minute summary plan to deliver about what your study was, what the main methods were, what your main results were, and the potential implications. So that's something I encourage you to practice with your scholarly concentration advisor so that when you're presenting your poster, you have a clear way to show what your study was all about. Here's our Medical Student Research Symposium. You can see there's faculty and students involved. Faculty are excited about looking at a poster. Students are explaining what they have. It's a great way to network. It's a great way to show what your results are. It's a great way to be excited about the research process in general. When you do that 3-minute summary, you want to have the main findings. So limit it to 3 main points. Was it the right amount of material in a logical order and to make a connection to what the next steps are. And one author has suggested being clear, being quick, and being gone. So if there's a sea of about 1,000 posters at some of these conferences, you want to make sure that you give the snapshot about what your study is doing, but realizing that other investigators are going to have a busy time wading through that sea of posters. So you want to be quick and be concise about what your findings are. When you're at your poster, anticipate questions and answers. So questions might be, what is the hardest thing that they could ask me? Make sure you understand the question if someone asks you. So if you don't understand, ask your own questions. It is okay to say, that's an interesting question, I do not know, but we should look into it. View this as an opportunity to stress your message, but also view it as an opportunity to network with other colleagues, with other professors, with other investigators in the same area. So in summary, a poster is your chance to show your work. It's taking the next step beyond the abstract to show what results you found. Use a standard format. Use large enough text, not making it too busy, so that people can follow your poster and be excited to look at your poster. You want to emphasize those key results and avoid presenting too much. Again, be concise in your findings there. But most importantly, have fun with this. This is your chance to really show your results, show your excitement about your project, and show what the next steps are. So I hope you've enjoyed this presentation on posters. And if you have any questions, please by all means feel free to email me. Thank you.